A lot of stuff happening in the NFL over the last few days, ramping up to next week's free agency, which begins on Wednesday. The Chargers releasing Joey Bosa after 9 years and 5 Pro Bowl selections with the team. He's been there so long they were in San Diego when they drafted him. Bosa was due about $12.5 million of a roster bonus on March the 12th. This move's going to clear just over $25 million in cap space for next season. Bosa went over 10 sacks in 2021, but since then, he's really only played about a third of the Chargers' games with injuries. A lot of free agents like Bosa with big names, but do they still have big games to back up those names? Bryant McFadden is going to play name or game beginning with Joey Bosa. Does he have more name, B-Mac, at this point in his career? He's set to turn 30 this summer. Does he still have game?
I'll say more name with Joey Bosa than game. And the reason why, you just kind of hit on it, Chris, the inability to stay on the football field, right? The last 3 seasons, he's only made 18 starts. He's been more injured than healthy. And then when he's been on the football field in those starts, only 13 sacks the last 3 years. So I'm not saying that Joey Bosa still doesn't have any production left in the tank. But based on what he's done throughout his 9-year career thus far, being able to establish himself as one of the high-level pass rushers, I side the differ in terms of what I expect to see from Joey Bosa moving forward. That's why I say it's more name than game moving forward with Joey Bosa.
He's still in his 20s. His teammate, Khalil Mack, is 34 years old. Is Khalil Mack more name or game?
When you talk about being 34 years old, I don't know what your wine of choice is, but you know, he's aging like fine wine. He's 34 years old, but the thing I like about Khalil Mack, and I think this is more game than name, is his ability to be on the football field. He's basically started every game the last 3 seasons, and outside of that, getting to the passer, 31 sacks in the last 3 years. That's basically double-digit sack seasons the last 3 seasons. That's great production. Yes, he's older, 34, but he's aging like fine wine. Whatever your wine of choice is, that's who Khalil Mack has been, and I think he still has that left in the tank moving forward in 2025. So this is all about game in terms of Khalil Mack.
What do you know about wine, B-Mac?
Well, you know, most of my friends are big-time drinkers, so I know a thing or two about wine. I don't partake in wine, but I know a little bit about wine, red wine, white wine, depending on what type of meal you're eating, right?
Yeah, maybe a little reduction sauce on your Cornish game hen that you order up to the hotel room every Super Bowl. We're talking ages here, and let's go to someone that's about our age. Aaron Rodgers is going to turn 42 next season. For reference, that's how old Tom Brady was his last season in New England. Does Aaron Rodgers have more name or more game at this point?
This is more name for me in terms of A-Rod, and when you look at what he did a year ago, I mean, he did give you pretty decent production for the New York Jets. We talk about 28 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, over 3,800 yards throwing, but that did not warrant to wins. Now, this is more name for me because moving forward, do we believe Aaron Rodgers can kind of go back to the Aaron Rodgers of the great times when he was putting on great numbers? No, I don't think so. I think Aaron Rodgers has to be more of a product of everything that's surrounding him than as an individual being super impactful and leading the team based on his individual skill sets. And because a lot of that has to do with father time. You know, having an Achilles injury definitely hurt his mobility in terms of being more athletic, making people miss. And just the age factor comes into play as well. So I think Aaron Rodgers is more name than anything in terms of what his game could be. I still believe he can give you good numbers, but in terms of being the great player that we've once raved about throughout his prime years in Green Bay, I think those days are long gone. So this is more about the name than game.
How about a guy that might be joining Rodgers once again, wherever he ends up, Davante Adams, who turns 33 next season?
33 and still kicking fairly well. This is game for Davante Adams. And the reason why I say that is because you look at what he did, making the trade from the Raiders, Chris, to the Jets in 11 games, almost 900 yards receiving in 11 games, not to mention, seven touchdowns to be exact. So when he finally found his stride in that offense, he still gave you the big playability that we've seen throughout his professional career. And I believe he still has that left in the tank as he gets ready for a new adventure with a new team in 2025. So Davante still has a lot of game left to be played. So I'm definitely taking game instead of name.
Okay, how about somebody a little bit younger, Amari Cooper, but somebody that really didn't perform when the Bills went out and traded for him. Only 20 catches in 8 games for the Bills. He turns 31 this summer.
Yeah, think about this. It feels like we've been watching Amari Cooper play since 2004. He's only 30. He's been around for a long, long time. He's been doing a fairly good job. But I'm taking the game with Amari Cooper, and here's why. You talked about the lack of production when he was moved to Buffalo. That was solely because of injuries. He wasn't on the football field, and when he was on the football field, clearly he wasn't 100%. This is game for Amari Cooper because his specialty is route running. It's never been about speed. It's never been about a quickness. It's always been about his ability to attack angles and be instinct in terms of his cuts, precise with his cuts. He still has that ability, and he just has to be healthy. And granted, throughout the offseason, one would assume that he will be healthy getting ready for 2025. And if that's the case, you know he can still route up any defender that stands in front of him. That's why I'm taking game with Amari Cooper instead of name.
A lot of these guys with big names, free agents, many more are potentially on the trade block, like DK Metcalf, like Cooper Kupp. There's another that's on the trade block right now, not a wide receiver, but a big-time defensive name. Trey Hendrickson, according to ESPN, has been granted permission to seek a trade. Now, he's 30 years old, coming off back-to-back 17.5 sack seasons. I think I know the answer to this, but at this point, if you're looking to trade for Trey Hendrickson, would you say more name or more game left in his career?
More game. He was the only bright spot for the Cincinnati Bengals on the defensive side. He led the NFL in sacks last year. And remember, before 2024 kicked off, he made it known he was looking for a new contract. They declined to pay him, giving him extension. Now he just created more financial leverage for himself. So when you look at the teams that could use a guy like Trey Hendrickson, not knowing what's going on with the Chargers, they definitely could use Trey Hendrickson. The same can be said for the Washington Commanders. The same can be said for the Dallas Cowboys, the Buffalo Bills. There's quite a few teams that can utilize a big-time pass rusher like Trey Hendrickson, but with that production, you have to go give him the money that he's looking to receive. So we have to see how this plays out. But one question I have, Chris, in terms of Cincinnati, your defense was already piss poor last year. So you're ready to move on with the best player, the one bright spot on your defense. Well, Joe Burrow, I hope you have that play 60 on warmed up, because you're going to have to score 50 plus to win ball games if you move on with Trey Hendrickson and some of the other players they will lose on the defensive side based on how bad they were last year.
Yeah, they tagged T. Higgins. Sounds like they're going to make Jamar Chase the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, or at least that's what the team says is going to happen. And now they've granted Trey Hendrickson permission to go seek a trade. What teams out there should be looking for a guy like Hendrickson that might be a Hendrickson away from becoming a Super Bowl contender?
Wow, a Hendrickson away from becoming a Super Bowl contender. Buffalo. I think Buffalo should be in the running for Myles Garrett or Trey Hendrickson, in my opinion. The thing I love about those two players, they look like what they hunt. Meaning the quarterbacks they hunt, 6'4", 6'5", 240, 250-ish, those players look like what they hunt. That's what you want on your defensive side. So if I'm Buffalo, Myles Garrett is my 1A, Trey Hendrickson is my 1B. Let's see what it takes, because you have to find a way to put pressure on the opposing quarterbacks that you believe you will see in postseason play. The Lamar Jacksons of the world, the Pat Mahomes of the world, the Joe Burrows of the world, potentially. So those are the guys you got to find that can have success against those passers. I like the Dallas Cowboys as well. Not necessarily saying that they make that type of move, they will be closer to hoisting the sticky Lombardi, but they can make things extremely interesting. You know what I mean? The same can be said for the Washington Commanders as well. Pass rushers, they're at a premium, Chris. If you're a team that has any playoff aspirations and these players are available to you, you have to at least see what it will take to try to get close to hoisting a sticky Lombardi. And oh, by the way, Chris, I'd be remiss if I don't mention the Philadelphia Eagles. One thing about Howie Roseman, he's like the mad scientist. He looks so innocent, he's so calm, but he causes chaos in terms of free agency and making significant moves. So you can never overlook the Philadelphia Eagles. They've already been associated with the Myles Garrett potential opportunity. I wouldn't be surprised if they can't go get Myles Garrett, maybe trying to go land a guy like Trey Hendrickson to add to what they already have on the defensive front.
Re-signed Zach Bond yesterday in that linebacking core. If you're the Bengals, and you said it, I mean, what do you have on defense, right? You're going to have to score 50 points a game if you don't have Trey Hendrickson. They're allowing him permission reportedly to seek a trade. That doesn't mean they're just going to accept anything. What would you want if you're Cincinnati in return for a guy who led the league in sacks again?
Well, multiple picks. You said it. He's 30 years old, so he's closer to the end than the beginning. But yet and still, he's still a serviceable guy. So multiple picks, maybe including a second-round pick. See, the thing is for Trey Hendrickson, you have to see what the compensation is for a guy like Myles Garrett in return to Cleveland, because he is below Myles Garrett in terms of the pecking order. So if you're Cincinnati, you can't just outkick the coverage, because Trey Hendrickson is a great player, but Myles Garrett is a greater player. So you can't really make it too difficult. You have to understand and see what the market is for a guy like Myles Garrett and what the Browns would want in return for his services. So me personally, multiple picks, maybe best case scenario, second rounder, but clearly at least a third rounder along with something else would be feasible, I think, for what he could do for the new team he's a part of. This is going to get dicey. It seems like every day, Chris, we're getting new news coming from the NFLs in terms of the draft, in terms of veteran, and like you mentioned, free agency is days away. So you think we're heating up right now, you might want to get the microwave ready and warmed up, because it won't be a crock pot type of offseason in the NFL.